So, you were born as a witch. Congratulations. You're officially the biggest scapegoat in history. Your life isn't just hard. It's basically a medieval horror show, and you're the unlucky star. The villagers? Just an angry, paranoid audience waiting for their next victim. And if you think death is the worst thing waiting for you, oh, sweet summer child. The real nightmare is what happens before that. The so-called trials, the tests, and the creative torture so grotesque and insane, they make horror movies look tame. The kind of punishments that make you wonder if people were actually trying to kill witches, or just really, really bored. Imagine being stretched until your bones pop, crushed inside an iron coffin, or burned alive while the crowd cheers. And the best part? You didn't even have to do anything to deserve it. Don't worry, we'll get to those horrors soon enough. But first, let's talk about how easy it was to end up on the witch list. So, what exactly gets you accused? Surely it must take some seriously dark magic to be condemned, right? Nope, not even close. The reasons for being accused of witchcraft were so incredibly stupid that they make modern conspiracy theories sound reasonable. Were you a woman over 40 with no husband? Witch. Did you keep a cat as a pet? Witch. Did you talk to yourself while cooking? Definitely a witch. If you were too attractive, you must have seduced men with evil powers. Burn the witch. If you were too ugly, well, obviously you were cursed by the devil. Burn the witch. Oh, and let's not forget about weather control. If a storm destroyed crops, or if the winter was too harsh, there was no need to look at science or basic meteorology. Clearly, some old woman in the village made a deal with Satan to summon a blizzard. It was so much easier to blame a random neighbor than to accept the fact that nature is unpredictable. Even food could betray you. If you baked a loaf of bread and it had an air bubble inside, congratulations. That bubble was proof of Satan's presence. The level of paranoia was so extreme that even having dreams could get you killed. If someone had a nightmare where you appeared in it, you were immediately suspected of astral projecting yourself to haunt their dreams. Sounds ridiculous? Because it is. But tell that to the thousands of innocent people who were tortured to death over it. Now that you've been accused, you might think, surely I'll get a fair trial? Oh no, my naive friend. The concept of fairness didn't exist in medieval witch trials. These trials were specifically designed so that no matter what you did, you were going to die. One of the most famous trials was the swimming test. You'd be tied up and thrown into a river. If you sank and drowned, oops, our bad, guess you were innocent. If you floated, congratulations, you were officially a witch and would be executed. Then there was the pricking test. A judge would stab your skin with a needle to find a devil's mark. If there was a spot where you didn't scream in pain, that was proof that Satan had numbed that part of your body. Of course, after being stabbed over and over again, you probably would go numb from shock, so yeah, you're screwed either way. If torture wasn't bad enough, the cake test was even more insane. They would bake a cake using your urine, feed it to a dog, and if the dog had a strange reaction, it was proof you had bewitched it. Because nothing says fair trial like forcing a dog to eat piss cake. But let's not forget prayer tests. If you hesitated while reciting the Lord's Prayer under pressure, you were a witch. If you spoke it perfectly, you were still a witch because apparently only Satan could help you remember every word perfectly. The trials weren't about proving your guilt. They were about killing you in the most humiliating way possible. If you thought being accused was bad, you haven't seen what came next. Medieval people didn't just want you dead, they wanted you to suffer in ways that made death look like a relief. For women, one of the worst punishments was the breast ripper, a metal clamp that literally ripped skin and flesh apart. This wasn't about justice, it was about humiliation. It was specifically designed to target women accused of witchcraft. And if that wasn't enough, they had the Spanish tickler, which sounds cute, but was actually a set of metal claws used to tear skin straight from the bone. And if they were feeling extra theatrical, they might strap you to the iron chair, which was covered in hundreds of spikes and sometimes heated to red-hot temperatures. You weren't just executed, you were turned into a human barbecue. If you even twitched, the spikes dug deeper into your flesh. One of the most disturbing forms of execution was the breaking wheel. This wasn't just a way to kill you, it was an event. They'd tie you down to a giant wooden wheel and slowly break your bones one by one with a club. Once your limbs were mush, they'd weave your broken body through the spokes of the wheel and leave you there to rot. But wait, there's more. If none of these sounded horrible enough, some witches were executed by being rolled down hills in barrels filled with nails. because nothing screams justice like getting shredded alive while rolling at full speed. Then we have the scavenger's daughter. Instead of stretching you, it compressed your body into a tiny metal frame until your ribs and spine cracked. It was like being stuffed into a suitcase, except the suitcase was made of iron and it was crushing you to death. Even after death, you weren't safe. Your body might be burned, desecrated, or chopped into pieces just in case your evil spirit decided to come back for revenge, because medieval people were that paranoid. And the worst part? These weren't just random occurrences. They were organized, deliberate, and completely legal. If you ever had the misfortune of being accused of witchcraft, you weren't just going to die, you were going to be made an example of. Now that the judges have decided you're a witch, it's time for them to get really creative with your punishment. And by creative, I mean completely ridiculous and horrifyingly theatrical. At this point, your trial is just an open brainstorming session for the worst ideas in human history. Someone suggests stretching you on the rack, classic choice. Another wants to shove a spiked ball in your mouth and crank it open. Someone else casually throws out, what if we roll her down a hill in a barrel of nails? And suddenly, it's unanimous. Justice has been served, but why stop there? The executioner chimes in with, we could always strap her to the iron chair, hundreds of spikes, and if we're feeling extra dramatic, we set it on fire. Everyone nods. Medieval justice was a mix of sadism and performance art. If you somehow survived these tortures, congratulations. You'd still be burned at the stake. And just to be extra sure, your ashes would be scattered, because what if your ghost came back for revenge? At the end of the day, this wasn't about proving guilt. It was about putting on a good show, with as much blood and screaming as possible. So, was there anything good about being a witch? Well, no. But if we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here, some people thought witches could fly on broomsticks, which would have been cool, except that in reality, flying ointments were just hallucinogenic herbs that made people trip balls. Being accused of witchcraft meant your life was over. You didn't even have to be guilty, just unlucky enough to get caught in the crosshairs of some paranoid neighbor looking for a scapegoat. You weren't going to prove your innocence, because innocence wasn't an option. You weren't going to escape torture, because they'd make sure to drag it out for as long as possible. And you definitely weren't going to live happily ever after, because you'd be lucky if your execution was only a burning at the stake. So, yeah, being born as a witch sucked, but hey, at least now we live in a world where people don't get executed over stupid superstitions. Right? Oh, and before you go, let's make a deal. No, not with the devil, a much easier one. Instead of being tossed into a river to prove your loyalty, just hit that like button. Instead of being pricked with a needle to check for Satan's mark, tap that subscribe button. It's much less painful, I promise. And unlike medieval justice, here you actually have a choice. So, go on, subscribe now, or risk being accused of watching this video without engagement.